Good evening, everybody. My name is Gemma Callow. I am the Communications Manager for the Clean Air Zone's Brum Breathe programme. I'm joined this evening by my colleague Peter Edwards, who's the Principal Officer for the Clean Air Zone. What we're going to do this evening is talk you through how the zone will operate, what support's available for people who live in the zone, and if you have any questions at the end, we'll answer them. So if you pop them in the chat box as you think of them, we'll address them all at the end. If you could just let me know you're hearing me okay, if somebody could just put in the chat box that you can hear me, and then we will begin. So I'll just get confirmation first of all that everyone can hear me clearly.
Not seeing anybody confirming that yet, Gemma.
No. If you can hear me, if you could just put a comment in the chat box, that would be appreciated. And then we can start with the presentation. Fantastic, that's great, thank you very much. So we'll get started now. And we'll talk you through the Clean Air Zone. So the Clean Air Zone is being introduced to address dangerous levels of air pollution, which have currently been declared a national health emergency. In Birmingham alone, air pollution contributes to over 900 deaths every year. It's linked to conditions such as heart disease, diabetes, asthma, etc. You can see some of the figures on screen there. And for children particularly, they are adversely affected purely because they're closer to the ground, closer to the exhaust fumes. They inhale 3 times as many dangerous air pollution particles than adults do. So I won't talk you through all the stats on screen there, but you can see there that it's an incredibly dangerous situation, and we've been tasked with improving the air quality in Birmingham. So in Birmingham, in the area that we're looking to introduce the zone, which is the Middleway, we can see here that when the statistics were taken, 50% of car journeys that were being undertaken in the city were for less than, 50% of journeys into the city were undertaken by car. And of those journeys, 250,000 journeys every day were being taken that were less than 1 mile. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to get people to consider taking alternative forms of transport, walking, cycling, etc., particularly those people that are driving for less than 1 mile. So clean air zones are going to be introduced across the country. Bath will go first on the 15th of March, and we are second on the 1st of June. We are the first zone outside of London that will be charging private vehicles. So it's important to stress that the Clean Air Zone is not a congestion charge. We will only be charging high polluting vehicles. On average, it's about 1 in 4 vehicles that's going to be charged. So if you're in a non-compliant bus, coach, taxi, car, and you enter into the Clean Air Zone, then you will be expected to pay a daily charge. The zones will differ across the country. Bath, for example, won't be charging private vehicles, but we have decided to take that course of action here in Birmingham. So the Clean Air Zone will go live on the 1st of June this year. It has been postponed twice, but it will be going live this time on the 1st of June. And it's everywhere that you can see on your screen is the blue area, so everywhere within the A4540 Middleway, but not the Middleway itself. So you can drive around the Middleway absolutely fine. As soon as you enter, then you'll be entering into the zone, and if you're in a non-compliant vehicle, you'll be subject to the charge. If you're in a compliant vehicle, you don't need to take any action other than consider if you could take more sustainable or active forms of transport, public transport as well. So if you are in a non-compliant vehicle and you drive into the zone after the 1st of June, the charge will be £8 a day for cars, taxis and small vans, and £50 a day for coaches, HGVs and buses. It's important to stress a day is midnight to midnight, not 24 hours from when you enter the zone. And during that midnight to midnight time frame, you can enter and leave as many times as you want for a single charge. If you drive in at 10 PM, however, and leave at 2 AM, you've crossed that midnight threshold and therefore will be subject to 2 charges. The government are launching a payment system, so you'll be able to pay online or over the phone. We'll announce details of that in due course. And you have a 13-day payment window, which comprises 6 days before you go in, the day you go in, and 6 days after. If you don't pay within that time frame, you'll be subject to a fixed penalty notice of £120. That's reduced to £60 if paid within 14 days. We are currently installing signage all around the borders and entries to the zone. There'll be about 300 signs going up warning you that you're approaching and about to enter. But it's important to stress that the onus will be on the driver to know that they've entered, and on the driver to make sure they make the payments. You won't receive a text or a letter advising you that you've entered and need to make charge, so the onus is very much on you. So the main question, what is a compliant vehicle? What vehicles will be charged? So if you go to the Brumbury's website, we do have a link to the government vehicle checker there, and if you use that vehicle checker, you can go online, enter your registration details, and it will tell you whether or not you'll be subject to the charge, and if so, what that charge will be, whether it's the £8 or the £50. Like I said previously, it's not a congestion charge. Only 1 in 4 vehicles are likely to incur the charge. So if you have a petrol vehicle and it's a Euro 4 standard or better, you won't be charged. So that's most petrol vehicles from about 2006 onwards. If you have a diesel vehicle, as long as it's a Euro 6 standard or better, you won't be charged. That's approximately most vehicles from September 2015 onwards. And then, as you can see on screen, we've got the gas Euro 6 standard, fully electric vehicle, fully hydrogen fuel cell, and the hybrid electric, subject to meeting those Euro 4, Euro 6 petrol and diesel standards. You can find your Euro standard in your V5C logbook, or like I say, if you go onto the online vehicle checker, that's the quickest and easiest way for you to check. So the aim of the Clean Air Zone, despite what you may read in the media, is not to create a load of money for the council. It's not intended to generate revenue. The purpose of the Clean Air Zone is to improve air quality in the city to address that national health emergency. If we make no money from the Clean Air Zone, then we've done our job, because it means there are no high polluting vehicles passing through the zone. However, we do anticipate that there will be some fines and charges, particularly in the early years. So we are required that we have to invest that money that we raise in transport related projects and policies. We can't use it to prop up the bin collections. We can't use it to fix the fountain in Victoria Square. It has to go on transport related projects to encourage active, sustainable or public transport travel, things like that. So some of the options identified so far are controlled parking zones that will pay and implement on the border of the Clean Air Zone to stop people parking their vehicles on the edge and walking in, causing problems for residents. We're funding a hydrogen bus pilot. We're doing some work on the city centre pedestrianisation and also an enhanced programme of active and sustainable travel. So you've probably seen cycle routes and things being introduced. The funding from the Clean Air Zone will help to bring forward those schemes a lot faster. At this point, I'm going to hand over to my colleague Pete. He will talk through the support that's available, particularly for residents in the zone, which is what most of you are here for this evening. And then once Pete's finished, if you have any questions, we will answer them. Just post them in the chat box. Over to you, Pete.
Thank you, Gemma. Yeah, just to introduce myself, my name is Peter Edwards, Principal Clean Air Zone Officer, with overall responsibility for delivering the exemptions as part of the Clean Air Zone support packages, and obviously one of the key things that people are interested in hearing about. So first of all, it's important to say how these exemptions were devised or created. So in 2018, Birmingham City Council did a consultation. There was a misinterpretation that consultation was, should we do a clean air zone or not? That was never the question. We've been mandated to do it. It's necessary. We need to do it. Gemma's already touched on the impacts of clean air, of poor air quality in our city. The consultation was more about, when we do this, how should we do it? Who should we charge? Who should we support? Who will be the worst affected? And that's what influenced this package of measures that you can see in front of us and on the following slides. So for the audience on this call, the key exemption support available is a 2-year exemption for residents within the Clean Air Zone. So if you live in the Clean Air Zone and you have a non-compliant vehicle, you can apply to us today, tomorrow, and you can have that vehicle exempted for up to 2 years. So that's obviously key for the people on this call. And then what the other main exemption we have is for people that work in the clean air zone. So that might be your friends or your family who might have concerns about this. If you can pass the messages on, that if you work in the clean air zone and you earn less than £30,000 a year and you work for more than 18 hours a week within the zone, then you can also access an exemption. That exemption is for 1 year. The residence is for 2. Similarly, if you run a business in the clean air zone, so you've got fleet vehicles based and registered within the clean air zone, you can also get an exemption for that. And finally, we know that we have the Children's Hospital and a couple of other medical centres providing out of hours and emergency services within the zone. Visitors to those centres, so patients or people dropping off, will not be expected to pay the charge if they go in a non-compliant vehicle. That will be administered via a kind of voucher system, which is in development at the moment, and kind of administered by the centres themselves. Next slide, please, Gemma. So, you're a resident in the clean air zone. What do you need to do in order to gain access to the exemption? The application process is open and is online. It is on the front page of our Brumbreed's website. We have terms and conditions and a guidance document to guide you through the process. And luckily for you as residents, it's the easiest one to prove. All you need to do is to prove to us that you are the registered keeper of a non-compliant vehicle. So we need to see your, as it says on the screen, in most cases, your vehicle logbook. Most company cars will be compliant, so I've not seen one yet. So most likely your vehicle logbook, we need to see that it's registered in your name and at an address within the clean air zone. And then we then need to see that you have you're at an address in the clean air zone. So the usual things, council tax bill, a utility bill, anything like that. You submit those online via our online application portal. It's a 2-stage process. You set up an account, give us some basic details, and then at the second stage you put some vehicle details and you upload picture, PDF, whatever is easiest for you. That comes through to my team, who then will process your application. And at the moment, with residents' applications, we're turning them around the same day, because as you can see on screen, it's pretty simple. So if you drive a non-compliant vehicle and you want to access this exemption, I would urge you to do it as soon as possible, because it's very manageable for me and my team at the moment. As I say, we're turning them around very quickly. As we know, human nature, people will leave this till the end, and we are anticipating that in April and in May, we're going to be incredibly busy. And it's important to add that just because you're a resident in the clean air zone and you have a non-compliant vehicle, until you tell us that and until we grant you your exemption, the cameras don't know that. So just having it, you have to apply for it. You need to come to us and you need to prove it, and then we will issue you with an exemption. You won't receive they're called permits on the system that we use, because the software system we use is from a parking permit software, but you will not receive a physical paper permit or anything that goes in the window of your vehicle. What we are doing is creating something called a whitelist, which will be a list of thousands of vehicles that have been granted exemptions and will then pass into the clean air zone. The camera will spot that it is a non-compliant vehicle, and the next stage of these camera systems and these software systems talking to each other will then say, no, actually this vehicle is on the whitelist, so nothing will happen. So there'll be nothing for you to do in those first 2 years. Next slide, please. In addition to the exemptions that you saw on the other screen, there is a range of exemptions available for specialist vehicles and other vehicles. So motorcycles are exempt and do not require, well, these ones don't really need to apply. Motorcycles just will be picked up by the camera and there'll be no action taken. Having a blue badge, disabled badge, does not give you an exemption from the clean air zone. However, if your vehicle has disabled passenger tax class, and that is accessed through various, if you're on various disability benefits, you can get that via the DVLA, then you will have a national exemption and you will be exempt from all clean air zones across the country. Showman's vehicles, so that's fairgrounds, that sort of thing, events vehicles, historic vehicles, so over 40 years old, will be exempt. Specialist vehicles, so your recovery vehicles, emergency services, gritters, things like that will be exempt. And then finally, community and school transport, so things like ring and ride, not-for-profit transport will have an exemption. These are ongoing exemptions, not time limited. Next slide, please, Gemma. So this is not so relevant for the people on the call, so I'll just pass over this slightly quicker. In addition to the exemptions, people that work or run fleets or run taxis in the clean air zone will be able to access the funding that you see here on screen. There isn't a financial incentive scheme available for residents. My understanding is that as part of our original business case to government, when we asked for this pot of money and we asked for more than £35 million, we did ask for a scrappage scheme for residents, but the government didn't approve that. So for residents, it's an exemption, but there is not then a scrappage scheme available. Next one, please, Gemma. So Gemma's already talked about the fact that the clean air zone is not a congestion charge, and some of the reasons for doing it, but also what we're trying to do, and that is trying to shift people out of their own private vehicles. And the clean air zone fits nicely into Birmingham's transport plan, and you may have seen bits and pieces of this in the media. Some parts of it have been picked up by the media. So the Birmingham transport plan has four main visions. You can see those on screen. The first one being to reallocate road space away from private motor vehicles and to people who are walking, cycling and getting public transport. Some of these measures have been brought in and accelerated via emergency active travel funding during the COVID crisis. So you may have seen on your local high street social distancing measures, taking away car parking, giving people more space on the high street. They've done it on my local high street in Kings Heath. You see temporary cycle lanes just with cones and stuff, and add bus priority. All of these moves encouraging people to move away from private vehicles, especially for those short journeys that Gemma's already talked about, and give more space and give more priority to people who are choosing to walk, cycle or use public transport. The next one is to transform the city centre, again, kind of repeating myself, to give more space to those groups of people away from private motor vehicles. Prioritising active travel in local neighbourhoods, so that's primarily in the form of low traffic neighbourhoods which have been introduced across the country, and we now have a couple in Birmingham, and making it easier, yet again, as I keep repeating it, for people to walk and cycle in their local area rather than jumping in the car to go 1 mile down the road because it's convenient, because it's the easiest thing to do, making it slightly less convenient in some ways, and encouraging people to walk and cycle those trips. And finally, to try and manage demand by using parking as a demand management tool. So removing all free parking from within the clean air zone, introducing controlled parking zones in and around the zone, to make it again less convenient for people to drive into the city centre. So those measures are within the Birmingham Transport Plan, and the clean air zone is kind of part of that plan. Next one, please. I think this might be one of the last slides. So yeah, the clean air zone is acting as an enabler of change. Birmingham City Council can't do this on our own. We need business, we need the community, we need residents to support with this. And we, as everybody knows, we're in a climate emergency. We're currently in a public health respiratory pandemic emergency, and action needs to be taken. So the clean air zone also plays into the net zero target by 2030. So some of the things that funding that we got from central government is going towards, and can be further bolstered by funds from clean air zone revenue, you can see on screen. So the rollout of over 300 electric vehicle charging points will begin this year across the city. Purchase of 20 hydrogen buses, a press release went out about that last week, so they'll be on some of the sprint routes, servicing some of the Commonwealth Games locations, and also purchasing up to 50 electric Hackney carriages to encourage adoption of this technology within the taxi fleet, because we know it's not easy for Hackney carriage drivers. It's slightly easier for private hire drivers, because you can buy a vehicle from 2006 onwards, but the Hackney carriage market, there is only one ultra low emission vehicle on the market at the moment. So there's lots of differing measures going in to support differing stakeholders across the city. And it's just to re-emphasise that this is not just the responsibility of Birmingham City Council, but we are supporting in as many ways as possible. I think that may be the last slide. So yeah, just to say that there's a wealth of information on our website. The key is to go on and check your vehicle. And if you are, and most of you I assume are residents on this call, if you are driving a non-compliant vehicle and the vehicle checker will tell you, then please do apply for your exemption. That's what it's there for. There's a wealth of other information on there about what other people and case studies are doing. So please visit our website. You can sign up for a monthly newsletter. So anytime there's big announcements made by the team, then that's the way you will find out. So I'll just pop myself on mute for a second and just bring up the.
Okay, so I'm now going to publish the questions that we've received and Peter will answer them for you. Continue to ask your questions, please, in the chat box as you think of them, and we will answer as many as we can for you. If we can't get the answers tonight, we will absolutely get the answers from the team in the morning and follow up with you all. So
the one I saw while I was presenting was about, it was at 8 minutes past 7, was about how often do you think restrictions will be tightened to higher emission standards? The answer to that is I don't know, but not in the near future. I would imagine. What we've seen in London, they've had their ultra low emission zone for a couple of years now. Rather than making the emission standards more difficult, they're extending the boundary. So at the moment they have quite a small one in the city, the central area, the congestion charge area in London, but they're going out to the North Circular. But Birmingham, it's taken Birmingham, by the time we go live, as Gemma touched on, there's been delays. It's taken us a couple of years to get to this point, but there's no plans at the moment to change the emission standards, and that wouldn't be driven by Birmingham City Council anyway. That would be driven by central government. But we know that central government wants to phase out petrol and diesel vehicles by 2030. So if the clean air zone doesn't work and we don't meet compliance standards, then they may decide that more is needed, but that wouldn't be a decision for Birmingham City Council, but it's not imminent. Non-compliant resident vehicles are exempt until June 23. It was previously proposed to be end of 21. No, that may be because obviously we should have initially gone live in January 20. That didn't happen because of the government's vehicle checker. We then should have gone live last summer, but then COVID happened. So the residence exemption has always been 2 years from the day the zone goes live, and I should have made that clear in the presentation. So the exemption does not start from the moment we approve it. It starts from the moment the zone goes live. So if you don't apply until August 21, you will have 22 months rather than 24 months. Hence why I'm kind of emphasising the need to apply sooner rather than later. How do you know if your car is compliant? Please go to the Brumbury's website that you can see on screen. There's a government vehicle checker that will give you a result. It will tell you about Bath. It will tell you about Birmingham. So please go to the Brumbury's website, and it's right at the front and centre of our. I think Gemma's going to put the link in for you now. Yes, absolutely. You can have a copy of the presentation after that. We will send up a kind of follow-up email with lots of links following the meetings. What happens if you travel outside of Birmingham, say Worcester, in a compliant vehicle? Well, if you're in a compliant vehicle, there is you will not be charged in any clean air zone. The only issue you have is when you drive into a clean air zone, so us, Bath or London, towards after June in a non-compliant vehicle, then you'll need to pay unless you have an exemption. What is the implication of the clean air zone for school visits to Birmingham city centre? So the coach companies will hopefully be replacing their fleets and introducing Euro 6 diesel coaches. But if not, then yeah, they will need to pay £50 each time that coach enters the zone. Yeah, person at 722. Yeah, sorry, Gemma's already replied. If you have a compliant vehicle, there's no action to take. We would like you to think about driving it less and walking and cycling and using public transport. But if your vehicle is compliant and you've got a result that confirms that on the government's website, government checker, then there's no action for you to take. You don't need an exemption. Please don't apply for one, because we'll just decline it, because the first thing my team does is check if the vehicle is actually compliant. Will the charge go up next year? I doubt it. That would be something that would have to be done by negotiation with local government. The rates, I think, are set in collaboration with them. Again, you can't rule these things out. If it's not working and people are just paying it, then maybe, but it's not imminent. Nice to see some praise. Somebody saying brilliant, long overdue. Hopefully those improvements with young families in the city. Might be a question for a different amount. Electric charging points to those who have driveways away from their homes. Yes, it's very challenging. I live in a terrace property. If I wanted an electric vehicle, I don't know how I would charge it. It hasn't really been addressed. It's something that needs to be addressed by the industry. There's been talk of putting them into street lamps, into street lights. I've seen presentations about that, but it doesn't seem to have become a mass technology yet. You see these awful images of people running cables out their windows and potentially trip hazards. That hasn't really been addressed yet. What I would say from previous experience and working in the industry is that the technology is such now that you don't need to charge it every single night unless you're doing a long commute every single morning. So for my lifestyle, if I could afford one, if I wanted an electric vehicle, I could probably charge it once or twice a week. So when you go shopping or when you go to a garage, and what needs to be implemented is more and more of these rapid chargers, and that's what Birmingham will be installing. And these are the chargers that can charge a vehicle within 20 minutes to half an hour, rather than having to leave it for 4 hours. So there will be more of that, but the answer when it comes to people without driveways is not there to my knowledge as yet. It's a good question. And any more news of the LTN for the city centre? Well, what's been introduced is this traffic cells initiative that they have borrowed from the Belgian city of Ghent, which got quite a bit of media coverage when they released it, whereby they split the city centre into 4 cells, cut up like a pizza, somebody described it, and you can drive in to any section. So let's use Digbeth as an example. You can drive into Digbeth, but if you wanted to go from Digbeth to the Jewellery Quarter, you could not drive through in a private motor vehicle. You would have to go back out onto the ring road and round. Whereas if you're in a bus or cycling or walking, obviously that would be there. So that cell initiative has been put in place. I'm not aware of any low traffic neighbourhood proposals for the city centre, but on a personal perspective, I'm living in one at the moment, been rolled out in Birmingham, in Kings Heath. It's been transformative for the area. I think it's a very positive thing. So I don't know how that would work in a city centre, but yeah, those cells, that cells approach is being developed, and some of the measures have been put in to restrict car movement through the city centre. Oh, I think there's one more just popped up, Gemma. Are all non-compliant vehicles using the A38 having to pay the charge? Yeah, if you drive through the zone, whether you go along the A38 through the tunnels and you're non-compliant, you will have to pay. The cameras are located in such a way that is the case. Similarly, there are cameras within the zone. So if you, again, I'll use that example, if you live in Digbeth and you want to go to the Jewellery Quarter and you think, oh, well, I'm not crossing the boundary, I don't have to pay a charge because you haven't got an exemption for whatever reason, you would still be picked up by a camera. So there's no difference if you're going on the tunnels or going along the A38. Everyone will have to pay a charge. So if you need to go across the city in a non-compliant vehicle, you don't have an exemption, then the advice would be to use the ring road or to think about travelling another way. How often do you recommend we check the vehicle checker? I don't want to be caught out 3 months down the line. It does say on the front of the vehicle checker, check again. So where are we now? Maybe check once or twice more, but it's only really the only time I think that they've put that caveat in is if your vehicle was released around about 2006 or around about 2015 when Euro 4 and Euro 6 came in. There have been a few issues with people who main one is Euro 6 came out in about September 2015, and some people had Euro 6 diesel and they got it in May 2015, and some of those people have found that the vehicle checker tells them they're not compliant despite it's perhaps saying it on their V5. So if your vehicle is 2010 petrol, I would say that you maybe, yes, definitely check again in April, May, but you're highly unlikely for that result to change. But if you've got a result that you think is incorrect, or you're near that cut-off point, then yeah, it's absolutely worth checking again. And if you are one of those people who has a Euro 6 vehicle registered before September 2015, there's a clear way of contacting the DVLA via the vehicle checking website, and they will get your vehicle record updated. I think there's a couple more. I'm not really in a position to talk about the King's Heath because I'm talking about that as a resident, not as a Birmingham City Council officer. Personally, as a resident, so I'm not going to talk about that in an officer capacity. Will disabled bays still be given to residents when the parking permits come in? Yeah, there will be no removal of disabled parking bays. I think if you're talking about the resident parking schemes that are going into places like Highgate, yeah, any disabled bays will be retained, absolutely. How will visitors know that they need to check if their cars are compliant? Well, there'll be signs everywhere. These will be in every major city going forward. We're one of the first adopters. As Gemma said, there's 300 odd signs. If they're visiting you, please tell them. But by the time the zone goes live, even if you drive into the city centre now, there are signs everywhere, so you should know by now, and you should know by then. But so if they're visiting you, please tell them. But it is the responsibility of the driver.
I think the other point to make there, Pete, is that we are working with key stakeholders and businesses, etc., across the city and key tourist attractions. So they are adding it to their websites, etc., so that when people book a visit to the city, they should be notified at the time of booking.
Yes, good question. Should have touched on that in the presentation. Yeah, so if you applied for your exemption when we opened last February, March, you don't need to reapply. You can log in. If we've already approved you, it will say that on the system. You can log in and check, and we just haven't issued them yet. So we will issue them closer to the launch of the zone. So no, you don't need to apply. The dates will just be updated on the system. Obviously, when you first applied, it probably said July 20. Now it will say June 21 because of the delays that we've faced with COVID. So no, you don't need to do anything. If it says that you've been approved, once we issue it, you will receive a confirmation email from the system, and then you will be added to our whitelist. Which means that you are then exempt for the residence period. But if you have a specific question about an application that you've made, or just please email what you can see on screen there, Clean Air at Birmingham, and the team will pick it up. We monitor that daily. Can't see any further questions coming through, so give it a minute. I'll just pop myself on mute, give it a minute. And then we'll close the call, I guess. Okay, well, thanks very much. Oh, yeah, so that's Gemma. That's not a question, that's from Gemma, just a bit of advice. So go to the website. Yeah, just to wrap up, thanks for attending this evening. Please visit the website, please check your vehicle, and please apply for that exemption if you need it.
One more question, Pete.
It's a thank you. So thank you. I'm glad you found the presentation useful. So yeah, we'll wrap up. Thank you ever so much. If you think of a question now after we've closed, please email it. Will you have more parking for motorcycles? Not in a position to answer that. I don't know the answer to that question. I doubt it. I don't know. If you have any further questions after we close the call, just send them across to cleanair@birmingham.gov.uk. As I say, myself or Gemma before the end of this week, when we find time, we'll send the presentation round. We're recording this presentation as well, I should say, that so it will go onto YouTube, and we'll send a link to it. So please do share it with friends, family, colleagues. I'm not really in a position to give advice on where you can park your motorbike, but if you I'm sure there's parking at birmingham.gov.uk or on the Birmingham City Council website. I'm sure you can find that information. Okay, great. Thanks ever so much. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and thanks for your time this evening. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.